Guys, we've been tracking the heat in the desert Southwest. We've looked at the temperature in the Antarctic move up to 36 degrees above normal during that polar winter of all times. Think about it. There's reports coming out from many nations around the planet indicating a lot of people are suffering from this record heat, and records are being broken on every continent. The Arctic is also breaking global records as far as heat. Now, in doing this, we talked about how the Earth will, over centuries or thousands and thousands of years, regenerate itself, or really shrug itself of anything that is destroying the planet. It will rebalance, put everything back into something that the Earth can sustain, and that's what we're seeing now. But looking out, why is it happening now? What you're seeing is this is just a drawing, illustration, but the sun is right here and it's moving in this direction. What you're seeing is interstellar clouds. Now, you've got different densities. Some are thin density, called low density interstellar clouds. Some are a little thicker. And when the sun moves through these denser areas, it has a shield just like the Earth. The Earth has the magnetopoles. The sun has the heliopoles that encompasses all the planets of the solar system. So that edge of the sun starts heating up. And now they're starting to see, guys, the other planets and the moons start to increase in temperature. So naturally, us being the third planet from the sun, if they're looking deep into space with Voyager, and they're seeing the heating and the difference in the density of these, again, interstellar clouds, guys, we are moving into a warmer section now. And remember, I mentioned the sun shields, just like the Earth. The heliopoles, it feels that compression, and that heat and that compression is pushed all the way back to the sun, including all the planets. Again, the satellites and the distant Voyager type craft are picking up temperature rises throughout the solar system because our planet is moving into a warmer section, or a more compressed section of these interstellar clouds. And that is what's causing the entire thing. So what we're looking at is not just a solar system event that we were calling a planetary event, but we're looking at a galaxy event. The entire creation is changing. Now notice these blue lines. The gold line indicates the direction of the sun. The blue lines indicate the drift pattern of all of these interstellar clouds. What does that indicate? Because the sun is moving in this direction, in its spiraling pattern, all of this indicates that this gas is being pulled into the center of the Milky Way. You see what I'm saying? So that's what you're looking at. These clouds, the the sun and the Earth and the entire solar system has now drifted into one of these dense clouds, and it's done it a long time ago. But now it's getting into one of the denser sections where it's compressing the heliopoles back into the solar system. But now we're, again, passing into a denser system, and it's affecting everything. Again, you would have had to know a lot of information if you go back to the prophecies in the Bible talking about this change on earth will not be by a flood, but by fire. And we're seeing the heat-related problems everywhere. Now, using that IBX data, put together this thumbnail, guys, and here's the sun, and like I said, you have the heliosphere. Here's the Earth, you have our magnetosphere. The different planets have their own. But as, again, this heliopoles is hitting into this galactic input pressure that's called the local interstellar cloud. They kind of named it the fluff. You've got a heliopoles boundary compression zone right here. This compression is what's, if you notice how this heat is indicating being pushed back in, compression creates heat. It's called the, again, boundary compression zone. And we're moving into a denser section of this cloud. And again, this is coming from IBX data stream information. The model is made from that. And so this is what we're seeing. It's just an illustration again, but to point out why it's all overheating, guys. Now we move to the big picture. Let's move back to global data just a moment. Nations across Europe, North America, and Asia, they're experiencing unprecedented and record-breaking heat waves with multiple countries at all-time national regional highs. Now you know why. The most extreme conditions have been recorded in the following regions. Guys, and we've talked about, again, the record heat at the polar winter in the Antarctic, but they also have broken records at the North Pole, too. An intense historic heat wave has swept across Western, Central, and Eastern Europe, with the continent heating up twice as fast as the global average. Think about this. Now, in France, it broke national historical indicators for June temps, reaching 41 degrees or 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit in Paris. Now, they're talking about 9,000 people over there have died during the heat wave. Looking deeper into it, they have so many bodies, guys, that they can't really get to the autopsy stage. And so they're saying that all of those are not just heat related, but they have not had time to separate that out. It could be lower, like in the 2,500 range they know are heat related deaths, but 9,000 people or 9,000 deaths during the heat wave. Again, 105 in Paris. That's not heat index. Germany has recorded a preliminary national all-time high of 41.7 C or 107. National all-time highs. Do you see why in the prophecy of the Bible that it says not by flood, but by heat, when this system regenerates itself? The Czech Republic and Poland, both nations provisionally shattered their all-time national temperature records, breaching the 104 degree Fahrenheit mark, which is 40 degrees centigrade. You know, we're kind of moving north into Europe, and some of these places should be cooler. Now, other nations, they're seeing records, guys, break in the UK, Switzerland, Denmark, and Hungary. In the U.S., a dangerous and prolonged heat wave is engulfing large portions of the central and eastern U.S., putting tens of millions of people at risk with triple-digit temps and feel-like heat indexes consistently soaring to 110 to 115. We seen it 126 here just a few days ago, guys. Just so you know, and we do our outside weather station the same way that the National Weather Service does. The heat index is measured in the shade. So is ours. And moving to Asia, guys, several countries in South and Southeast Asia have set severe all-time heat records with conditions frequently soaring past the 40 degree centigrade or 104 degree Fahrenheit mark. Nations such as Cambodia, Myanmar, and Japan have established devastating new highs in recent months. And we were, you know, like I said, we had to look outside because it's such a global effect that the sun has to be in control. And then we look past the sun, and it's the entire solar system that's heating up. Now, this alone should be the trigger mechanism for the global scientists, and I think they're paying very close attention to it. But the baseline global records of Earth have recently reached unprecedented peaks, with both the Arctic and Antarctic undergoing historic simultaneous heat events that are redefining modern climatology. Normally one is cold, the other one's in summer, right, guys? This is not right. It is not normal. Something's happening very quickly. Now, I tell you, there's things that happen inside of our solar system that do affect us, not just outside into these high density or low density clouds. Guys, the binary twin of our sun is a gas giant. We call it Jupiter. It's the only planet inside of our solar system that does not orbit the sun. It's the barycentric center is outside the sun. The sun and Jupiter orbit a spot outside of the sun. They rotate around each other, basically. Now, Jupiter orbits the sun 11.8 years. That matches the solar cycles. Now, you'd think the closer Jupiter got, the more intense it would get on the planet as far as heat. Two gas giants getting closer and all. But the close approach was in 2023. And so now Jupiter is moving away from the sun, moving back out a little bit. And so we're seeing the decline, supposed decline in the solar cycle. They said we'd reach the peak of solar cycle 25, and there would be a second peak, which has happened before. Now, when you look at that, there's a lag in effect of that mechanism because of the great distances. Also, guys, that we've been looking at the X flares coming in and looking at the solar wind speed charts. And if you look at them now, if you still have the link, you can see the solar winds are still elevated somewhat. And that's because when you get a solar flare, you'll see the initial increase in the solar winds, which in the long run increases heat everywhere. But it has a residual ring. In other words, once it's gone, it's past the planet, the entire electromagnetic field of the Earth resonates for 2 or 3 days sometimes. And you'll see that in the charts from the satellites and the data showing you the elevations there. And so it's a lingering thing, just like as we saw Jupiter come by at its closest approach 3 years ago, that effect is lingering now. Plus you add in these low density clouds. But the year 2024 holds the record as the absolute year globally, or warmest year globally since records began in 1880. The following year, 2025, last year, closely trailed it as the third warmest on record. Now we're going to break all those. Again, you cannot imagine, I never could imagine this globe going through the Arctic summer like it is now, and the Antarctic melting the ice sheets. And remember I talked about the top of the 14,000-foot mountains, the highest in the Rockies in Colorado, are barren of snow, and that makes the rocks a thermal heater on top of them as the sunlight hits it, instead of an alpine cooler, right? Well, the same thing is being reported in the Antarctic. Some of the mountain areas, there's no snow. They're getting a little rain, but that washes what snow is off. So what has happened? The same thing. Instead of the alpine cooling of the ice sheets reflecting like a mirror of the heat back into the atmosphere, the rocks are absorbing it. So we got a runaway thermal situation at both poles. Where do you think this is going to lead? Are your ducks in a row? Now, so far, again, looking at Death Valley, 134 degrees was the single air temperature, or the warmest single air temperature ever recorded on the planet. And that was at Furnace Creek Ranch in Death Valley. For you guys that watch that information, let's see if we break it this year. The desert is extremely warm, but guys, what else is it going to do when we see the entire solar system moving into a different zone? The timing of our Creator is placed perfectly, it seems, because he knows the cycle of mankind. They'll be here for a while, everything's cool, then they overpopulate a certain area and start depleting the resources. And I guess he knows, he's seen the cycles time after time after time, flood after flood, disaster after disaster, come and go. And so by he created the universe. He knows the cycles. He knows those clouds are there. He knows the timing that our planet and our solar system will move through that time. How else would we be told at this very moment we would see this change come by heat, not by flood, by fire, not by water? And guys, just to be clear, we're setting polar records again. The Earth's poles are warming at 2 to 4 times the speed of the rest of the planet, fracturing seasonal norms. You want to explain that? The coldest parts of our planet are warming 2 to 4 times the speed of the rest of the planet. The great ice sheets, the ones that collapsed during the Younger Dryas. And, we talked about this. One of the big ice sheets and glaciers there in Antarctica, it is slow melt coming down. with the heat, it would eventually, over years and years, raise the sea level by about 10 feet. You know, and that would be pretty rough on places like Florida and all. But they have seen that over the last several years, just inches or half inches at a time, because of, you know, the beginning of warmer seasons. But now that it has accelerated, will that, it's a question, will that accelerate that 10-foot, or what they're calling 3 meters, a little over 10 feet right in there, right in that area, will that accelerate? The younger dry ice caused ice sheets to melt over Canada and North America, and the ocean rose 400 feet. Bermuda was if you could look at the Bermuda Triangle before the younger dry ice big melt, it was a giant volcano that you could see for hundreds of miles, and a massive land area. So whatever was buried at 400 feet is somehow still operating enough to throw GPS off and compasses off for hundreds of years. Kind of reminds me of Skinwalker Ranch and that GPS distortion. Anyway, now going back to the North Pole, it's the warmest period on record. The 12-month period from October 2024 to September 25 registered as the warmest surface air temp in the 125-year Arctic record, as long as they've been able to get up there and take the measurements, right? Now, this year is not over. The last decade comprises the 10 warmest years ever seen in the Arctic. Sea ice is at historic low. In March last year, Arctic winter ice sea contracted to its lowest annual maximum extent in the 47-year history of satellite tracking. So we're seeing a 10-year pattern. We're seeing this year accelerate to both poles. And when it gets to that point, guys, it's not like, okay, it's going to start snowing tomorrow at both poles. It's entering a cycle that is fueling itself. In other words, you're heating the poles, rocks are being exposed, the sun's hitting them, sun's hitting the Rockies, more heat is exposed. It's not reversing, it's accelerating is my point. Now, before I forget, if you've seen any videos vanish from YouTube, look on my Patreon channel at BP Earthwatch on Patreon. Now, that's out on the Trinity Peninsula, but if we move further inland into Antarctica, they're seeing deep interior spikes. Even the ultra-cold, high-altitude areas, and we were talking about the Concordia Research Station is 2 miles above sea level, right? It's like in the Rockies. Anyway, previously smashed its absolute record by peaking at a minus 12 degrees centigrade, which is 10 degrees Fahrenheit, an unbelievable 72 degrees Fahrenheit higher than its typical seasonal baseline. It's on, my friends. Now let's move forward to 2026. Today, it says the year 2026 is seeing an extraordinary acceleration of global climate anomalies. Yes, we are. With several months tracking at near record heights and both poles experiencing extreme, unprecedented weather events. The key global and polar climate records established so far in 2026 include: second hottest May, the global average surface temperature for May 26, now this is the globe, reached 60.46 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the second warmest record, or second warmest May on record globally, tracking just behind 2024. Now, in the extreme northern hemisphere on June 21st, 2026, the northern hemisphere, which just passed us, guys, the northern hemisphere average surface air temp hit 70.23 degrees Fahrenheit, setting a new record high for that specific day of the year. And because of the impending El Nino, really it's not impending much anymore, it's here. But anyway, driven by exceptionally high sea surface temperatures, which is driven by the sun, which now is being driven by the galaxy. Driven by exceptional high sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, scientists are warning that a strong El Nino is developing. They're a little late, but it's there. If it intensifies as expected in late 2026, it could push further or future months into absolute record-breaking temperature. Do you see now why I watch Meade and Powell so often, which I'm going to do a report on this afternoon, why I watch the daily levels change? Because this, and I always say, I'm putting in the formulas, guys, a linear model in case it stays exactly the same, and then the real world climate model to the right, as we looked at, that includes these factors. Now we're looking at, they're saying this could push the records into record-breaking territory. So do you understand the drought situation a little better? Now, just on the light side, I wonder if they have carbon taxes throughout the solar system. Anyway, on the North Pole, the warmest June settlement, the world's northernmost research settlement at 79 degrees north, tied its all-time warmest June on record with an average monthly temperature of 5.7 C or 42.26 degrees Fahrenheit, above freezing. In mid-March 2026, Arctic winter sea ice peaked at maximum extent of 5.52 million square miles. This tied for the lowest annual maximum peak ever recorded since satellite monitoring began. And guys, I usually report the storm coming in, and then it's up to everybody else. I don't report on the casualties that much. It's sad for one thing. But here it's important because it is global and everyone needs to pay attention. They're saying heat-related heat waves across the globe have resulted in thousands of casualties as extreme temps stress healthcare systems, cause fatal heat strokes, and severely exacerbate underlying health conditions. Because official diagnosis takes time to process, the current casualty count reflects a combination of confirmed direct deaths and statistical excess mortality models. In other words, it's too many for them to get to at one time to determine the cause. But Europe has had 3,700 plus excess deaths. Now, and guys, if you think about it, since the data is matching to both poles, it's like a candle burning at both ends, would you say? But again, seniors and the vulnerable groups, these vast majority of casualties are elderly citizens in Rome and Paris. Emergency health infrastructure has been strained, forcing workers to use tracking bracelets to monitor the health of the seniors. Independent climate modelers from Indiana University estimate that once the statistical lag catches up, the total death total specifically from the June European heat wave could exceed 20,000 deaths. It's getting serious. Guys, and it may just be me, but over the weekend I would casually, and yesterday especially casually, look over at live feeds, say from the White House or from North Dakota, wherever they were having presidential parties and 4th of July parties and things like that. And man, over half of them were like, they're canceled because of lightning or high winds or rains. Did anyone else notice that? Anyway, in the U.S., the intense heat dome blanketed 2/3 of the country leading into the Independence Day holiday. Current toll, authorities have confirmed at least 25 heat suspected deaths spanning from the deep south up to the Midwest and East Coast. The casualties include individuals overcome by triple-digit temps and stifling humidity. The conditions force the cancellation or scale back of multiple major 4th of July outdoor celebrations and parades to prevent further medical emergencies. Like I said, they fell like dominoes. And guys, again, Asia, they're predicting tens of thousands. In 2023, 85,000 people died with heat-related causes. India and Pakistan, not that high, but it's affected everybody. And we're just getting into the warmest part of the year in the northern continents. And guys, I know a lot of people say, especially in the last few months, that mass migration is not really a thing that will happen because of this. But the Maya civilization, it says a series of severe, multi-decade droughts ruined the advanced agricultural systems. You see that repeat anywhere? Leading to starvation, warfare, and the eventual abandonment of their great cities. Playing all over. In the Indus Valley, changes in monsoon patterns dried up the critical rivers that they relied on for farming, forcing a massive disorganized migration that permanently fractured their society. In the Akkadian Empire, a sudden, catastrophic dust bowl and drought in the Middle East collapsed their centralized economy and food supply almost overnight. Like I said, these have been continued events as the Earth cycles. And now, possibly during each of these events that we're looking at, the Maya, the Indus, the Akkadian guys, were we going through these interstellar clouds at that point? Makes sense. Now, looking at what we have always perceived as how this happens, it's called, solar radiation, the sun. The sun is the ultimate source of ocean heat. Sunlight penetrates the surface of the ocean where water molecules absorb the solar energy. The more the solar energy, the warmer the El Nino. The top layer, guys, just the top 10 feet or 3 meters of the ocean stores more heat than the entire atmosphere of the planet Earth. 10 feet. And remember I mentioned that they're starting to see waves because the water is warm enough to increase the density at that point or to expand out. And water has an incredibly high specific heat capacity called the sponge. This means it takes a massive amount of energy to raise the temperature of water compared to air or land. That's just telling you how much solar energy, which now we understand is not just the sun. It's the entire galaxy as it moves through these systems. But this means it takes a massive amount of energy to raise temps of water compared to air of land, just at 10 feet. Now, we got to include the Earth's core in this, but look at this. Hydrothermal vents, underwater volcanoes, and tectonic movements along the ocean floor release geothermal energy directly into the deepest layers of the seawater, not the top 10, not, it comes in at the bottom. The percentage, though, while it's there, this geothermal energy accounts for less than 1% of the ocean's total heat content. The sun remains the dominant driver. I've always said the sun is Earth's weather. The sun's weather is Earth's weather. Now the solar system and the galaxy is the Earth's weather at the final transfer point. Now, I'm not going to keep you much longer. I am working on an afternoon later video on Lake Mead and Lake Powell, though. What you're looking at is sea surface temperature anomalies, in other words, above normal. You can see, guys, let me move this over just a little bit. The chart here, you go from black in the center, red, yellow to white as the heat intensifies. Now, pulling this back over, you can see exactly what's happening. This is record-breaking heat building up from solar energy. Now, look at the temperatures around here. Again, these are above normal, and it's hot, and it's showing the same type situation. But let's go to the summer Arctic. Look how the heat anomalies are encroaching into the North Pole. See this here, and then on this side also. Now, if we swing to the Antarctic, remember we were looking at Trinity, that peninsula? Look at the anomalies around it in heat. You see why the ice sheets are melting? And the possibility, well, it's not a possibility, we just don't know the rate of the ocean sea rise because we don't have enough data to determine how fast it will deplete. We're still in the early summer, but these indicators, both there, all the way around the Antarctic, the encroachment of the heat. And they're saying there's so much of the ice sheets along the edges, guys, are melted that the sun is now, instead of being reflected back off the Arctic and the ice sheets around it, how it covers the ocean is absorbing the heat there instead of reflecting it back into the atmosphere. And that just is an endless loop of heat creation. Now, I want to go back, as we usually do, and look at the desert Southwest just a moment. And again, look at how much hotter it is than normal. And let's look at if there's rain available yet for our friends there. And again, to the east, we're seeing it. Last night, we got some thunderstorms, guys, pretty intense, but it cooled it off so much. I'm not going to complain ever about rain again. I don't care if I'm on the ark. But here in the desert Southwest, it's a different story. You've got moisture blocking all along the west coast. Look at that. This Pacific moisture that would normally come in, give you some relief, especially into the northwest, is completely blocked. Look at it going up into the Arctic. That is what you're looking at in the browns is the total precipitable water. The amount of water in the atmosphere that would create rain or snow. Look at that. Same thing, let's look at the bottom. Let's look at the Antarctic again. Look at that. It just is not happening. They said they're getting a little rain that just basically washes off the snow, but look at how much water is available, almost none. To replenish the snow is my point. But guys, again, not going to drag it out much longer. We have a global problem that's caused by a galactic problem on our hand. And again, kind of blows some heat scientists out of the water. They were correct. They just, in some ways, they just weren't going to the source. We just did it. I don't think there's any other reports that tie this heating into that. Guys, remember, our Father loves you, we love you, and this is a heads up. The reason I do it, and each time you'll see we get a little more intense into this heat and drought situation, is to constantly remind the people that are directly involved in the initial stages about it. But you realize, guys, it won't be long till every entity, both animal, plant, mammal, it doesn't matter. Humans will be affected. Already it's affecting sea life on both and marine life on both of the poles. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.